Hey everybody, it's Dr. Jensen with CCJ3701, Research Methods in Criminology. So today is Lab 9. It's your last lab, which is both good and bad news, right? The good news is you don't have to do any more labs, which can be, again, time-consuming and complicated, but it pushes you to really figure stuff out and try things, get messy. But also, this represents one of the last times that you are doing kind of your skills and acquiring your strategy and your process on how to do stuff. From this point forward, you are really tasked to use all these skills that you've learned, like recoding and building scales and summations and using conditions and running statistics like ANOVAs and t-tests and chi-squares and regressions, and now starting to apply that to your own topic, your own variables, your own data, generating some results, and writing it up in a report. So it's kind of like moving away from the professor and venturing out on your own, but at the same time, it should have provided you some confidence and some experience at doing some of this stuff. So just think back in the beginning of the semester, you couldn't recode a variable to save your life, and now you're really good at it, right? You can do it in your sleep. It just takes practice. So you should be very proud of how far you've come and celebrate this final lab. And then use these skills to go kind of attack your data and get going on your paper. And I'll be there to help you along the way. So if you have questions about a variable you want to use, hey, Dr. Jensen, should I recode it? Come talk with me. You can talk with the graduate teaching assistant too. We'll give you some advice on how to go forward. Maybe you don't need to recode a variable. Maybe it's ready to go out of the box and it's fine. So we're happy to help you make those decisions as you start doing that. But let's get into Lab 9. I'm just going to kind of give you some tips and tricks. We're going to go ahead and open up Add Health. That's our data set we're going to be in today. And we're going to be doing more of a CJ style question, something that's a little more relevant to criminology type of research, stuff that you would see. Okay? So in the lab, you are going to run a logistic regression. Your file's on the R drive. We're using the Add Health data. In this exercise, we're going to try to make predictions on the likelihood of getting arrested using other topics, drug use, coming from a single-parent family, and gender. Our research question would be, how does drug usage, single-parent experience, and gender impact the chances of arrest over a person's lifetime? Okay, so what's kind of cool about Add Health is it surveys people from when they're teenagers, and then they're in their early 20s, their late 20s, and then their early 30s. So over approximately 16 years, from the early 90s to the mid-2000s, it sampled them and asked questions about them and followed them over time. We actually call that a longitudinal study, when we take the same group of people and we follow them and we keep talking to them as they age and as they experience new things. So we have 4 waves or 4 times that we visited with them, so we can kind of see what's happened over their life course. So people really like data sets like that because they can kind of look at past behavior and past experiences and see how it really influenced them in the future, if that had any kind of effect. So that's what we're going to be doing today. So the first thing you're tasked to do is create a new variable named drug use. Okay, so you have to make a decision here. Now remember, in an earlier lecture, we kind of practiced this. So we're going to take a whole bunch of variables. We're going to make a drug use variable that represents whether a respondent has abused prescription drugs or used any illegal drugs. So there's a whole series of questions that asked about, have you ever used these drugs? And it actually tells you, use these 10 variables. Notice they all have little 4s inside them. That means these responses came from wave 4, when everybody was in their late 20s, early 30s. So the last time we talked to everyone, meaning we had kind of a whole series of 16 years to talk with them and to see what they had done over that 16 years. Okay, so we kind of like that, being able to have more time to say, not only did you use it when you were 16, what about when you were 25? Okay. So first we have to decide, are we going to do a scale or a summation? So let's go back to what we talked about earlier and make sure we make the right decision. So with the drug usage scale, we had did you use a drug that was not prescribed? Did you use sedatives, tranquilizers, stimulants, painkillers, steroids, marijuana, cocaine, crystal meth, other illegals? And you could either build a scale or a summation. All of these drugs were answered the same way, with 1 is yes or 0 is no. You could literally add all these items together and create a high score of 10, I used all 10 drugs, or a low score of 0, meaning I used none of them. And scores in between, I used some of them. Remember, with the scale, it's this and this and this and this. So only the people who responded to all 10 questions will be scaled, and so it's demanding of your data. High accuracy, but low sample size. Now remember, when we talked about logistic regression, sample size is a really big challenge, because to do all these little estimations and predict likelihoods and probabilities with these little logarithms that are being run in the formula, you have to have a lot of people in the sample. You have to have lots of cases to do this on to make that little matrix work. So that may or may not be the best way to go about it. For the summation, you could take those same 10 drugs and add them together in a little bit different way, okay? And again, it'd have a similar meaning. However, the summation would go like this or this or this or this. So any people who responded to any of the 10 questions would be included. So maybe I answered the questions on marijuana and cocaine and prescription meds, but I kind of skipped the ones on steroids and on heroin and painkillers. Okay, I would still be included in your scale even though I skipped those. Okay, so I get a higher sample size but a little bit lower accuracy, because it's hard for me to know, did you answer 2 out of 5 or 2 out of 10? How many questions out of those 10 did you actually answer? Because a 2 out of 5 means I've done half of the drugs I answered about, but 2 out of 10 kind of tells me I've only done a few drugs out of a lot of drugs. So the interpretation's a little bit harder to do, but so you have to be careful with interpretation due to those accuracy limitations. So based on that, you have to make a decision back in your lab. Are you going to build a drug use scale or drug use summation? Okay, you probably will build a summation. Most of the time in criminal justice, we want to know if you've done any of the 10 rather than have you responded to all 10. It's more rare in data analysis that you find people to be such highly responsive people that they give you so much data you don't know what to do with. So sometimes we have to be kind of, okay with a little bit of accuracy issues in order to get a good sample. So because sample size is an issue for logistic regression, we're going to make a summation. So here's some tips and tricks on making that summation. When you get in the data, you're in Add Health. The data start at H4TO63. So we're going to go ahead and do kind of a Control F. Put your cursor in the name field in the variable view, and you can type in H4TO letter O 63. Okay, and you can hit close when you're done. Expand the label a little bit and you're going to see this is the beginning of these 10 drugs that we're going to look at. Okay, so the first few talk about taking drugs beyond prescription, sedatives, tranquilizers, stimulants, and painkillers. And then the next few talk about steroids, marijuana, cocaine, meth, or other illegals. Notice it doesn't mention heroin by name in here, but it would be included in other illegals. Mushrooms, spice, and those other things. Okay, so there are the 10 you're going to use. Now, one little trick I use is you're the only one that's going to be in this data. And it's kind of tedious to have to scroll through and type in these little codes and try to find them all when you're trying to code them and work with them. So here's the little trick. You can double click on these and rename them. Drug 1, Drug 2, Drug 3. As long as you know what they are, you're the one using them, this would be fine. And as long as you have good notes as to what changes you made, then you're okay. So this is where you would want to save a copy of the data set to your M drive. And that way you preserve the original. Should you ever need to go back and find the original names, you can do that, because that's what they're going to be referred to in the code book. So there is a point in saving them. But you can see I basically just renamed all 10 of those Drug 1, Drug 2, Drug 3, Drug 4, Drug 5. Okay. Once you do that, when you get ready to build your summation, you go to Transform, Compute Variable, and I'm going to make a target variable here. drug underscore usage underscore summation, or you can call it drug usage variable or whatever you want to call it. When I get ready to start popping these in my expression, you can put your cursor in your variable list. Again, sometimes you have to hit reset to repopulate this. The reset button's down here. But when you rename them, they should be in here. Go ahead and flip this view to the variable names and start typing the word drug. Okay, so now they're all very easy to find. They're all neatly stacked right next to each other, and it'll be very easy to put them in your expression. So remember, to build a summation, you have to go to this function group box, select statistical at the bottom, and then select sum. Then you use the arrow key, pop it up in your numeric expression box, and you see the little question marks are highlighted. That's where you put your drugs, your variables. And then there's a comma. Go ahead and highlight the next question mark, and you can start putting in your drugs one at a time. Just put a comma next to each one, no spaces. Put in the next drug, comma, the next one, comma, until you have all 10 in there. Make sure there are commas between each, because that's telling SPSS to do something. So you have all 10. Okay, and then at the very end, you'll have that closing parenthesis, which says that's the end of that summation. So once you have all of those drugs in there, you can click OK. And it's like, yay, I built your scale. And you're like, where is it? Remember, you have to run a frequency of what you just made. So back in your variable view, if you scroll all the way down, you will now see your drug usage scale. You have to give it a label. So go ahead and type into that label box, drug usage scale. And you can put little notes in here like I used, prescription drugs, prescription abuse, plus illegals, anything you need to know just to remind yourself of what you did. And we don't do any value labels here because it's a numerical or an interval ratio variable, so we don't label those because the number is what it is. But let's run a frequency of your new variable. Okay, so we can go here and right click on it, ask for descriptive statistics. Your scale should look like this. So most people have done none of those drugs, okay, but we don't know if they only answered the cocaine question and just said, nope, never done cocaine, and then skipped the rest. But these are the rest of our answers of how people have done. Looks like there were 8 people that answered all 10 and that said, yep, I've done everything, all 10 of those drugs, all 10 of those things I've done. Okay, here you have some more statistics about your scale you just built. Now, if you want to find out the mean, you can go back to Analyze, Descriptive Statistics, and then Frequencies. Ask for statistics, and you can say, I would like a mean, please, over here on the right. Click Continue, put your drug scale in there, and you can get the mean, which is an answer to one of your questions. Okay, so that's how you make your drug scale. Just a little bit of help with that. Okay, so those are just some tips to kind of make life easier. Paste the frequency of your drug use variable here. What's the average number of drugs used? Then I ask you, what are those independent, dependent, and control variables? So you'll have to go back and look at how the question's worded to identify what they are, because you can't run an analysis if you don't know which one is which. Excuse me. Eventually, you're going to look at some new variables that you need to work on for your research question. So it asks you to find the PA10 variable in the data set, which is what we call a parent question. So this particular study had an in-home questionnaire that went to parents of the kids that were in the study. And let's take a look at that. I'm not going to walk through this one as detailed because I want you to be able to make the decision on your own. But let's put our cursor in the name field, click PA10. We'll just put that in the little search bar using Control F to find it. You'll notice there's all these little PQs at the end of all these questions. That stands for parent question. It's just a way for people to remind themselves this was a parent question. But look at this marital status question. We got a lot of categories in here. So you're going to have to come up with a coding scheme that'll work for people that are married versus people that are not. So I'm going to let you puzzle through that, and we'll pick up in the next video.